Hello, welcome to Mike Ferry TV. I'm Ron Cronin. For the last couple of weeks, Mike has been answering questions from agents who have attended some of our recent events, and I'd like to continue with that today. The first question that I'd like to answer is, why does it seem to take so long to get out of that 50 to 60 transaction rut? Well, I got to be honest, for you to be in a rut of 50 to 60 deals a year, that's not a bad rut to be in. In fact, I know a few agents who would kill to be in that rut, but I understand the question. You know, Mike has always taught us that going from 50 to 60 transactions a year to 100 deals a year, isn't that difficult, believe it or not. It's more difficult getting an agent from 0 to their first 50 a year. But to go from 50, 60 to say 100 deals, you have to understand that agent more than likely already has the skills required to sell a lot of property. You can't sell a lot of homes without having a good level of skill. So we'll assume they have a strong skill level. They obviously have systems in place to handle that workload because that's a lot of listings, a lot of transactions, a lot of paperwork, a lot of files, obviously. You've got to have systems in place to sell 50 or 60 homes. And then that agent more than likely has a pretty strong work ethic because to sell a house every week or more, isn't that easy and requires a strong work ethic and the ability to put in the time necessary. So, it's interesting to increase their production, someone doing 50 to 60, it's usually a matter of how they use their time. How you use your time is the key to this. We'll find an agent doing 50 to 60 deals a year, spends maybe 2 to 3 hours a day generating new business. But an agent who's doing over 100 deals a year, well, they're typically doing more than 3 hours a day, maybe 3 to 5 hours a day of income generating activities. So not only it's how they use their time, but it's also their ability to delegate non-income producing activities. Delegation is something that most of us need to be trained on. The ability to delegate things like file work, paperwork, administrative work, MLS work, data entry, those types of things. Some of the social media things, handling some of the inbound calls from customers can all be handled with delegation by someone else or having a system in place. So their ability to manage their time differently and their ability to delegate. Great question. The second question today comes from an agent, and she asks, besides our own database, where can we get names to call each day? Right? Where can we get names to call each day? Well, if you think about who your service is for, who needs a realtor, a real estate agent? Who needs that? Well, it's typically someone who owns a home and wants to sell it, or someone who would like to buy a home. But, it's very safe to understand that your service is directed at people who own a home. So where to get the names, well, that's not really that complicated. Okay, so consider anyone who owns a home may be a potential customer for your service. It's just a matter of asking. Okay, so ultimately, I guess if you can't find phone numbers, there's always your ability to go knock on the door. There's not necessarily laws against that, and unless it's association stuff. Okay, but your service is for people who own a home and would like to sell it. Let's spend our time finding them. Now, out of all the people in your community that own a home, some of them are probably more likely thinking about selling. Who could that be? Well, let's look at, say, for sale by owners. There might be something there. There's a sign in the yard that says they would like to sell their home. And by the looks of that sign, they're not represented by an agent at this point. Well, your service is designed for people who want to sell their home. So for sale by owners would probably be a good source. Expired listings. It's another group of people in your community, in the marketplace that you work. Expired listings are people who want to sell their home. We know this because they've been trying to sell it for the last 6 months. We know statistically the majority of expireds will relist their home within 48 hours. So expired listings are names we can call besides our database. And then think about what I said at the beginning of this. Your service is for people that own a home and want to sell it. So why not go around and talk to all the neighbors around recent sales and all the neighbors around recent listings that have come up, either from that you've listed them, an agent in your company, or any agent for that matter. It's a matter of talking to the neighbors around the sales and the listings. Okay, but remember who your service is for. Now, when it comes to getting phone numbers for, say, expireds and other people like that, consider some of our affiliates at Mike Ferry. Some of our affiliates are the Red X, Arch, ARCH, and Cole Realty Resource. RedX, Arch, and Cole have a great service, all of them do, that could help you get the actual contact information. But remember, if ultimately you can't find the information, you're not willing to pay for a service to provide it, you can always go knock on the door. Good. Our third question I found very interesting. Our third question is, how do we break through the fear of closing at a listing presentation and convince the seller to sign with me versus the competition? How do I convince the seller to sign with me versus the competition? And how do I break through the fear of closing? So, it's kind of two questions here. So let's look at this. How do you break through the fear of closing? Well, I wrote down a couple of thoughts. The first one is follow the script. It's such a novel idea, but follow the script. You see, by following the script, you'll automatically say the right things at the right time, and the close is part of the script. So if you're following the script, the close will happen at the right moment, at the right point in the script, and if you're following it, you'll actually close. Okay? So that's one thing, following the scripts. It's automatic if you follow it. Okay, good. I wrote down also for you, I wrote down the idea of practice closing a lot. Practice closing. It's a very important skill. Like a golfer needs to be able to drive the ball, putt the ball, chip the ball, move the ball where they want it, and it's very complicated. And closing is one of the skills that you, the salesperson, must be good at. Okay, so practice closing a lot. I jotted down, role play the scenario of closing, role play that every day. Make it part of your daily dialogue so that when it comes time to do it for real, it flows, it's natural for you, it's more comfortable. But you've got to be willing to, separate yourself and practice for a little bit each day. I don't know what it's going to take, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, I don't know. I don't know your skill level. However, I know that you can get real good at any of these skills with lots of practice, and intense practice helps. Okay? We have to remember what Mike Ferry has always taught us. He's taught us that closing is a natural ending to a great presentation. It's a natural ending. So your second part of your question was, how do I convince the seller to sign with me versus the competition? Okay, well, by making a great presentation, the close is natural. And then the last thing I jotted down under this topic was, to get chosen over the competition, present at the highest level. Present at the highest level. Like, do you have a presentation? Do you practice it? Is it rehearsed? Have you watched it on video? Have you had anyone critique it? Or is it different every time and you're winging it and trying to make it up as you go? Okay? Present at the highest level and you will be the one that they choose. Okay, so the second part of the question was interesting to me. It says, and how do I convince the seller to sign with you versus the competition? Well, I think it's you gave the best presentation out of everyone they were considering. Your presentation was best. And it made me think about the TV program, The Voice. You've more than likely seen The Voice, where these young people come out and they perform and they sing, and then they hope to be chosen. Well, how do they convince the celebrities to choose them? How do they convince them? They don't. What they do is they just go out and give their best performance ever, the best one they could possibly do, and then they smile and hope to be chosen. Same thing for you. I don't know that you can convince them to go with you unless you start giving up commission or throwing in a bunch of extra stuff. A great presentation will cause you the one to be chosen. And then on this, there was a second part to that question, or actually a second question from that same person. I thought it was great. And the last question that we'll answer today says, in this market, sellers are choosing the agent who promises the highest list price. All right? I come in usually the lowest price, but a true value. The question is, how do I get the seller to call me when the first agent fails? I find sellers never want to admit I was correct and they end up calling someone else. So that's a two-part question, right? So it's how do I get the seller to call me first when the first agent fails? Well, what I wrote down is this. Why is it after your presentation, the seller doesn't believe you in your price? Why is it they don't believe you after your presentation? Okay, so consider that it doesn't have to turn into where they choose the agent who has the highest price, but we want to make them choose you the night you're on the presentation. Okay, so I want you to write this down. Write down, I have to do a better job of presenting price. Specifically, I have to do a better job of presenting price. Okay, so how do we do that? How do I do a better job? Okay, well, let's make sure that you're scripted. Let's make sure that you have a canned presentation that's proven and that works, and that you rehearse it and you know it inside and out, backwards and forwards. Okay? If you don't have your presentation memorized, it's only going to be so good. Okay? Have the script memorized. All right? Another thought for you is to pre-qualify. If you want to do a better job of presenting price, pre-qualify the customers, pre-qualify the sellers. Because when you do, you're going to learn, well, A, the seller's degree of motivation. And see, if a seller's motivation isn't at the highest, well, that's where they tend to, want to overprice it and play games and, take chances and mess around when their motivation isn't very high, when it's maybe mediocre, mid-level, or, like that. But when their motivation is extremely high, they recognize the value of pricing it aggressively and how to get it sold quickly. Okay, so if you pre-qualify, you'll be able to understand better the seller's degree of motivation. You'll also be able to, by pre-qualifying, B, is you're going to draw out any objections about price if you pre-qualify heavily. You'll draw those objections out so that you are aware of them in advance. You know going in that you've got some other agents who have told them they can get more money for the home. Okay, it's common, right? But you'll be better prepared for any objections that you're going to receive. And then guys and gals, follow the pricing scripts that we've provided for years. We have pricing scripts, how to overcome when they want to list a little high, what to say when it comes time for a price reduction, what to say the night you're making your presentation so that the sellers agree with your price. Follow the pricing scripts that we have on MikeFerry.com. Okay? Now, remember, it's usually about your presentation. If you don't like the response you're getting, change what you say, change your approach, change your angle so that you draw a different response from who you present to. Okay, so I jotted down, consider improving your way of going over the numbers. Improve that. However you go over the numbers with the customer, whatever you say, whatever you show them, whatever you put in front of them, consider changing that. And consider just taking a different approach. I don't know what would make it different, but a different angle with it so that you draw a different response. Okay? And then also consider, improving what numbers you provide. Are you providing actives and pendings and solds and off market and make me moves? Are those part of your equation of value when you did your estimate of value? What are you putting in front of them in order to draw a decision to list it at your price? See, I don't want you to get stuck thinking that it's them. Of course they want the most money, just like you would if you were selling your own home. Okay? So let's not look at it as it's them. Let's look at it as it's possible, just possible, it could be your presentation that's causing them to list with someone else. Okay? And then, You said you find that sellers never want to admit I was correct and they end up calling someone else. Well, I want to know, why do you make them admit that you were right? Is that an important conversation you're having? And is that important for you that they know you're right? Or would you just like to help them get their home listed and sold? Okay, so we may have to save that one for another week, but give up your need to be right. Don't make them come to you begging to help them, right? Let them out of whatever happened. You're here for them. You're still willing to tell them the truth and still willing to help them sell their house. Well, guys and gals, I do want to remind you before I let you go is that if you like this type of training, if you like watching these videos and you're enjoying some of the things we've done on YouTube and Mike Ferry TV for years, you will love Mike Ferry's The Vault. You must check out The Vault. You'll find that on MikeFerry.com. I want you to enjoy it when you watch the promotional video and the landing page that we have on the website for you. But The Vault is power-packed full of audio and video training from top producers, managers, brokers, owners, Mike, myself, all of the coaches, and we have made training videos for you on every topic that's part of the Mike Ferry system. So we'd like you to check out The Vault. Don't forget that this year, 2019, we have events all over the country and in Canada. We also have events in Italy and Russia this year. And then lastly, the Superstar Retreat is coming up this July in Las Vegas. You don't want to miss the retreat. So if it's been a while, I'd like you to visit MikeFerry.com, and I thank you for watching.